Hello and welcome back to another video. I'm currently at a place called the London Bridge Lookout, where there's like a rock that's supposed to look like the London Bridge. I've actually been here before and I shot a panorama, which I'll chuck on the screen now, and that came out okay. But I'm coming here today to do some focus stacking, and I'm just gonna find a composition and then we'll get started. So I'm just gonna have a look around, see what looks good, scout out the area a little bit, and yeah, just see what I can come up with. Alright, so I've just found a little composition. It definitely isn't perfect, but I can't get any closer without falling off the cliff, so this is going to have to do. What we're going to be doing now is focus stacking, and the reason you might want to focus stack is if you have something really close in your foreground but also really far away, like this image I'm taking now. I'm going to chuck the image up really quickly just so you can see how close the foreground is and how far away the background is. Now, a lot of people would say to just shoot it at f/22 or f/16 or something like that, and everything would be in focus, but the truth about that is that not everything would be in focus, even at f/22, just because we've got things so close to the camera and so far away, and a lot of little layers in between as well. The other bad thing about that is when you put lenses past f/16, f/22 and things like that, they usually suffer from diffraction, which means you do suffer with some image quality loss. So I do prefer to focus stack when I am in a situation like this. Now with focus stacking, you still want a relatively closed down aperture, somewhere between f8 and f11. With this one, I'm going to be shooting f8. I find that's the sharpest point of this lens and most of the lenses that I do use. And focus stacking basically consists of taking a photo with the focal point close to the camera and then moving it further back into the background. Now, the number of shots you take will depend on how deep your scene is. For this one, I'm going to be taking quite a few. There's a lot of little tiny leaves and things, and even though, like I said, we're shooting at f8, the thing's really close to the camera, they are going to be out of focus even at f8 unless I take enough photos. So I reckon for this I'm going to be taking quite a few photos, maybe 5 to 10 just to cover myself. You probably don't need that many, but it's always better to take a few more. The other thing to keep in mind is that because they are plants, they are blowing in the wind. So I need to be mindful that my shutter speed is fast enough that I don't get blur between each photo. That will make them hard to stack. If in one photo a plant is here and another photo it's over here because of the wind, they're not going to stack properly. So just keep in mind, use fast shutter speeds and try and make sure the plant kind of doesn't move throughout your photo, which is a bit difficult. But these are small shrubs, so the wind isn't affecting them too much, so it should be okay. So you can actually shoot these handheld or with a tripod. I'm using a tripod today simply for the fact that I'm explaining the lesson. It's a bit hard to hold the camera, explain what I'm doing and take my time doing that. If you are handheld, obviously there may be some movement between your photos, but we'll align those in Photoshop. So if you are doing these handheld, make sure you're just as still as possible. And if you have like 8 or 9 images to take, it is going to be hard and you may need a tripod for that. But ordinarily, if I was doing this, I probably would use a tripod for the amount of images I need for this, but usually I try and do it handheld, but that's totally up to you. Depends on your camera, how good the stabilization is, and just a whole bunch of things like that. But yeah, I'm using a tripod simply so I can explain the lesson, and because I'm taking like quite a few photos, I don't want to move too much between them. So now there's a few different ways of actually changing your focus while shooting these. One of them is to just adjust your focus barrel manually. So take a photo, push your focus further out, take a photo, so on and so forth. Another method is to use autofocus and just tap your screen in different areas where you want to move the focus to. So you might tap the bottom and then slowly work your way towards the top of the screen or the background. And the third way is a lot of cameras, or some cameras, this one doesn't, but some cameras have built-in focus stacking or focus bracketing, which means they'll do all the focusing and take the photos for you. As I said, this camera doesn't have that. With this, I'm probably going to be going with the manual focus barrel method, and the reason for that is I don't think the autofocus, I'm going to be able to press a point small enough for these really small, the small detail on these plants right in front of me. So I'm going to manual focus and take a lot more photos than I need for that reason. So let's get started. I'll just switch my camera on. I'm in a bit of an awkward position here, but switch my camera on. Again, like all landscape photos, I've got my composition. I've made sure that the horizon is level, even though it doesn't look like it because this is a wide angle lens, so the horizon is getting a bit of a bulge in it, but we'll fix that later in Lightroom or Photoshop. In this video as well, I'm also going to show you how to stack the images when it comes to Photoshop. So I'm just going to set my exposure. Yep, so that's my exposure. I'm shooting at f8, as I said, 1/80th of a second for this, and ISO 100 because I want to keep this nice and as noise-free as possible. So I'm going to flick to manual focus and then just move the focus wheel to a point where the thing closest to the camera is in focus, which is about there. And then all I'm going to do is take a shot, adjust my focus further out, and just keep doing that. As I said, I'm going to take a lot more photos than I need because there's a lot of layering in this image with all the shrubs and plants. So let's get started. All right, so I think that was about 8 images that I took. Hope that all made sense. And now what we'll do is go back to the computer. I'll show you exactly how I process these using Lightroom and Photoshop to get a photo that's hopefully sharp all the way through. All right, so here we are back in Lightroom. Now, one thing to keep in mind about this image is I did purposely show a lot more of the foreground than I normally would have, just to basically show you this focus stacking technique. I probably wouldn't have included this much foreground normally, but all in all, I think it looks pretty cool. So the first image here I want to show you, these are all the images I took. The first one I want to show you is one shot at f/18, as you can see up here, and I just wanted to show you how even at f/18, not everything is in focus, and this is why focus stacking does work and is important for certain images. So if we zoom into the foreground, you can see a lot of this is out of focus, even at f/18, because my focal point was set on these rocks here. So you can see that even as we're getting closer to the camera, it is getting blurrier. So that is why we do focus stacking. So I just wanted to show you that really quickly. The images we're going to be stacking are these ones here, and I've got one at the very end that I didn't explain what I was doing on site, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to use it. But basically what I did, waited for it to get a little bit darker so I could extend my, and the photo looks horrible, just ignore it, but I extended my shutter speed to 0.6 of a second as it got darker, just to get a little bit of that soft look in the water. So the only thing I'll take off this image, if I decide to do it, is the water. So I've just made some changes so it matches, the watercolor kind of matches similar to what is in the original images here. Now it's a bit blue, I'll fix that. I may not even use it, as I said. But that's a method if you are focus stacking and you want to get blurry water. Just take a separate exposure for the blurry water and you can paint that in using layer masks. And alright, so here are the images, just these ones in between here. So the first one here, as you can see, the focus is right up in the foreground, right here. And even at f/8, you can see that even just these here, they're coming out of focus. So that's what I mean by even at f/8, and things like that, things very close to the camera will drop out of focus very quickly, and you can see the background's totally out of focus there. So what I did, I just manually adjusted my focus, took a photo, and kept doing that. And as you can see, as we move through the images, the focal point is moving further forward, or further up into the image. So I'll just scroll through these and you can see that somewhere, the focus is somewhere around here at the moment. And this next one, somewhere around here. Next one looks like it's somewhere around here. And this one might be somewhere here. This one is the rock in focus. And actually this one could be the rock in focus. And then this one, not that you need it, but I did do another one for the very background here. But at f/8, when something's this far away from the camera, where this large rock is here, everything behind it should really be in focus at that distance. But just to be sure, I took more than I needed. So we ended up taking these images here. And we took 9 photos, basically, of the stack. Ignore these two, as I said, this one here was just the example of what f/16 will do, and this last one is just for the water, which I'll probably won't deal with in this video. So what I've done, I just made some small edits to, I'll just deselect that. I just picked one of them and I made some small edits just to the exposure and things like that. This is what it looked like before. Because I exposed for the highlights in the image, I didn't want to blow the sun out in this corner here and some of the sky, so that's why it is underexposed. So I just made some small edits to bring up the exposure, drop the highlights, lift the shadows, just small things. I also changed my profile to Adobe Landscape. I don't always do that, but it does help with a pop of color. As you can see, if I go to Adobe Color, it's a little bit dull. Adobe Landscape just brings out the vibrancy and colors that little bit more. So that's all I've done with that image, and then all I did was sync them all together just so they all match. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, let me show you. So let's say you've made edits on this one here and the rest haven't been edited yet. What you can do, holding shift on your keyboard, you can click the last image then click sync, and check all, or you can just select which things you want to sync. I just selected them all because I haven't really changed anything else apart from some of these ones here. Then click synchronize. What that'll do, that'll put all the same settings on all the photos you've selected. So if you're in the same place like I am here, then the settings should be pretty much the same. So once you're happy with some basic edits, now at this point I'm not doing like full crazy edits with brushes or anything like that. It's just some basic edits to bring up the exposure to somewhere where I want it. Once we've done that, we're going to select the images that we want to use to photo stack, and we're going to right click these, go to edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And this is going to open up Photoshop and have all those layers on top of each other, and I'm going to show you how to align and stack those now. So as you can see now, all of those images have loaded up as layers in Photoshop. So what we're going to do is, with the first one selected, hold down shift and go to the last one and just click the last one, and that's going to select all the layers down in the layer panel here. Then we're going to come up to edit and auto align layers. Leave that on auto and everything the way it is here, and just press OK. Now what this is going to do is just align the layers just in case the camera moved. This is where it comes in really handy if you have shot these handheld and there's some slight movement between the layers. Photoshop will align those as long as they're somewhat close to each other and they're not all over the place. So this will just align them. You can see by there's been some slight movement. You can see the overlap of some images just on the edge here, and that's because maybe it was quite windy, so the tripod might have been blowing around a little bit. But yeah, so now we're aligned. With the images still selected, we can now come up to edit again and go to auto blend layers, and just leave it on stack images, and just leave these two ticked. Most of the time these settings work out pretty good, and then press OK. And what this is going to do now is stack the images based on what's in focus. So by the end of this, we should have an image that's completely in focus from front all the way to the back. And there we go. So what I'll do now is, because what you'll see on the very edges, there's some softness happening. Where is it? Yeah, just around here you can see there's some softness happening. This is normal when you do a stack like this. So what I normally do is either just resize the image to make it bigger to get rid of those blurred edges, or you can just crop in a little bit. So grab the crop tool and just shrink. Just like that, and that'll get rid of those blurry edges. And then what we can do is come over here, right click on this layer that says merged, and just click flatten image. That's just going to get rid of all the layers we don't need anymore, and that way the file size is smaller because we're not dealing with all those layers we don't need. So once we're at this point, you can press Ctrl or Command S on your keyboard, or come up to File and Save, and that'll save back to Lightroom, ready for our final edit. So if you want to here, you can do brushes, you can do all sorts of stuff once we're back in Lightroom. And as you can see, I think that's it there. Yep, that's it there. If we zoom in, everything is in focus from front to back. Look how sharp all the shrubbery is here. Everything's sharp from front to back. So from here, like I said, you just do your edits. I'm going to show you the final image at the end. What I do, I'm just going to do some brushes and some little local adjustments, and I'll show you the final image at the end of this video. The couple of things that I do like about this photo, like I said, I think there's a little bit too much foreground, so I'd probably crop a little bit of that foreground out. One thing I do love though is how the sand sweeps around. It's like a leading line that leads your eye to the rock there. Now I'm going to brighten the rock up and things like that when I do my final edit. It is a bit dark, but yeah, I like the composition here. As I said, there's a little bit too much foreground, but I wanted to show how focus stacking works with a really obvious subject, so I wanted to show a lot more of the foreground than I probably normally would have. Now some photographers disagree with focus stacking because they say it's not the way the natural eye sees. So in real life, if you're looking at this rock, in your peripheral vision, these bushes are going to be blurry or a bit out of focus. But the fact of the matter is, if you move your eyes to the shrubbery there in the foreground, they will be in focus in real life. So wherever you look in real life is going to be in focus. I understand that, like I said, if you're looking at, let's say you're looking at the foreground for this time, that the rock would be out of focus in real life to your real eyes. But when you're looking at a photo, it's a flat 2D image. You know, you're looking at it on a screen or a piece of paper if it's printed. So wherever you look, you kind of want to be in focus, and in my opinion, that's simulating real life more than something where the foreground's really blurry. And some people might want a little bit of an adventure, look around the image and see what's going on. And if it's all blurry in the foreground, it may be a little bit distracting. But in saying that, I don't think every single landscape photo should be focus stacked. I think it just depends on the subject matter, and where you want to draw attention to. So this image I think still would have been good if we go back to one of these ones. like this one here where the rock is in focus. I think the foreground still looks really nice here. And I think this would be doable whether we focus stacked or not, but I must admit I do prefer the focus stack version with all this detail here in the foreground. So I just want to clear that up. Yeah, as I said, some photographers or some people hate focus stacking, other people love it. I just decide, it really depends on the image and the focal point and where I want the eye to go through the image and what I want to draw attention to and things like that. So yeah. That sums it up. So yeah, hope you enjoy this one. Pretty nice and easy. I did take a lot more photos than I needed. I probably didn't need 9 photos. I probably could have got away with a lot less. But with all the detail and the little layers here as these shrubs go further back, I just wanted to make sure I covered my bases and got a lot more images than I needed. There's nothing worse than not taking enough images, which I've done before, and there's like a small line of stuff out of focus. So I took more than I needed and it came out pretty good. So hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next one and I'll show you my final image at the end here. Thank you.